At every moment, we are sprayed with clouds of earth. How many men are afraid? We are no longer in a civilized world. One suffers and says nothing. At our feet, the wounded groan in a pool of blood. For hours, these groans continue until they die before our eyes without anyone being able to help them. This is just one of many gruesome experiences written by Henri Desagneaux in A French Soldier's War Diary, 1914 to 1918. Henri's diary delivered an opportunity to observe the words and emotions through the eyes of a soldier by seeing the loss of humanity and enabling his uniform and nationality to define him. To Henri and thousands of other French soldiers, the unknown and the unexpected quickly became the life they lived day by day. In the war, Henri and his comrades were not only fighting against men, they were fighting to beat all odds. War is not only fighting the enemy, it also entails fighting against inhumane living conditions, the unknowns, and predominantly the fight for morale. Saturday, August 1st, 1914, the start of mobilization for the French army begins. This day was a day of mourning. It symbolized the start of Henri's new life for the next 4 years. It wouldn't be until the next day that Henri would officially join the war. When August 2nd came, Henri was mobilized as a reserve lieutenant and was sent to Gray by command. As Henri arrived at Gray, he wrote about the morale of the soldiers. The morale was excellent. Everyone is extraordinarily quiet and calm. But Henri knew what was to come. Hell was on its way. In just the second month of war, Henri's diary was filled with anger towards the French army leaders. They would organize multiple attempts for a mission, but would fail to pass on the information to their soldiers. Henri would spend many nights at the railroad transport service station, waiting for orders that failed to come. Henri wrote consistently the same story of the French army. They seemed to never have a concise plan on knowing where to station their soldiers. With multiple failed attempts on making a plan of attack, French soldiers would consistently march aimlessly with no confirmed plan. The French army was notorious of planning the unknown. In better words from Henri, it's the unknown, always the unknown. The unorganization of missions would take a toll on the morale of Henri and his comrades. By March 12, 1916, Henri took command of the 21st Company. It was now Henri's duty to raise the morale of the troops. But never having a consistency plan of attack, Henri's troops lived day by day in the unknown. Henri wrote of the difficulties he had to try and raise the morale within his troops. Eventually, Henri found it difficult to raise even his own morale. By June 10, 1916, Henri and his troops departed in the direction of Verdun. What laid ahead for them was the heart of the unprecedented dangers of the two most deadliest weapons in World War I, airplanes and machine guns. When the shelling of the airplanes shot down bullets towards Henri, he had felt a total of helplessness among soldiers, who could only wait until it stopped. Henri took the simplest measures, such as clinging to the walls along the trenches for survival. Life in the trenches was described as hideous and filthy. When writing about the trenches, Henri wrote with precise, vivid words. Nothing in the Great War was more certain than death when battling in the front. Henri also endured some of the most brutal forms of warfare. Thousands of soldiers, including Henri, were sent to fight away from home for years at a time. Because of the war, soldiers underwent many series of physical and emotional experiences that would change the unrealistic visions of morale through a soldier. The morale of soldiers was only at its peak in the war during the first month. Henri was completely startled with how extremely calm the soldiers were. These soldiers' morale was so high because of how clueless they were. They were completely taken back when they found out the war was complete human chaos. It would feel almost like living in hell. In Henri's diary, he always mentioned his disappointments with the leaders. As the leaders stayed consistent with the lack of communication with their troops, they would soon start to see the lack of morale. They would soon put the pressure on Henri to bring back the same morale from the beginning of the war. Henri wrote, "My superiors are counting on me to raise the morale of the troops." These leaders' main goal, instead of organize their army, was persistently raise morale within the soldiers. What is very ironic about this situation was Henri rarely wrote about seeing these leaders on the battlefield, and if he did see them on the battlefield, they were only coming to yell at certain captains. They never brought encouraging words. If they did make a visit, it was them being disgusted that their army was not moving forward fast enough. With these painful acquaintances, these leaders never raised the morale with the soldiers. They were more likely to lower the morale of their soldiers. If these leaders really wanted to raise morale, would it not have been more beneficial to bring encouraging word? Henri did write that the pretty obvious strategic plan they could have made was throwing the responsibility of raising morale to a more favorable person, such as himself, who understood what these soldiers were going through. Henri wrote about his exhaustion and how fed up he was with this war, but because of his duty to raise the morale within his troops, he had to completely bury all of that exhaustion in the trenches. At the beginning of the diary of Henri Desagneaux, he was just another soldier compelled to put a uniform on and to fight for his country. The realities of the war could have easily created an emotional disconnection between himself and his comrades. But Henri fought against that. Living through 4 years of war, he found strength in himself to overcome the tragic devastation of what a war can do. In creating a diary, Henri produced a textual world of contradictions, uncertainty, and emotional exhaustion to fight with morale in the Great War.